Capital punishment, also known as the death penalty, is a state-sanctioned way of killing a person for committing a crime. And Amnesty International has been advocating for the abolishment of death penalty in Zimbabwe. And today we are joined by Ms. Rosalina Mzerengi, campaigns coordinator with the Amnesty International. Ms. Mzerengi, thank you for joining us at SlyMedia TV.
Thank you, Shorai, for having me on Sly Media.
We want to understand and know that you, as Amnesty International, have been campaigning for the abolishment of death penalty. Why are you against the death penalty?
Let me just say that the campaign for abolition against the abolition of the death penalty in Zimbabwe and across the world has been a defining feature of the work of the human rights work of Amnesty International. And as Amnesty International, we oppose the death penalty in all circumstances, regardless of the nature of the crime or the nature of the person who has committed the crime. Why we campaign for abolishment of the death penalty? It is because the death penalty is a violation of the most basic of rights, which is the right to life. It is a cruel and inhuman kind of punishment that has no place in today's justice system.
How then can you make the public understand what you have just explained? Because some people might say that if you kill someone, you must also be killed. For example, we have the Mrewa case of Tabiwa Makore, which happened some years ago. We recently have the Gokwe, when a 3-year-old was slaughtered and dumped in a shallow well. Can the public understand that this case is to do with human rights issues?
As Amnesty International, like I articulated our position already, we oppose the death penalty, and we look at the death penalty from a human rights perspective, and like I said, regardless of the nature of the crime. So in terms of having the public to understand, yes, we make attempts to raise awareness of the human rights impact of the death penalty as a form of punishment, particularly when you look at the history of Zimbabwe. So you find that we'll find ways of educating the public about why we are calling for the abolition of the death penalty. But when you look at the world over, abolition of the death penalty has never really been about public opinion. It has always been about the political will of the leaders of a particular country.
Can you elaborate?
The political will is just that the leadership should be willing to abolish the death penalty in line with international statutes and also in line with the developments that are happening across the world, where there's a global trend of abolition of the death penalty in many countries.
What do you make of the idea that people think that death penalty prevents crime?
Well, we are a research-based organization, so the campaign against the death penalty that we have here in Zimbabwe and across the globe is based on the researches that Amnesty and other organizations working on the death penalty have carried out. So the findings of those research point to the fact that the death penalty does not deter crime.
Okay, how far are you so far with your advocacy in Zimbabwe?
Okay, our advocacy on the death penalty in Zimbabwe started way back. Maybe I could give you a history. During the liberation struggle, the members of our movement, Amnesty International, campaigned for the abolition of the death penalty, even in Zimbabwe, and they campaigned against the execution of the young people who were fighting for the liberation of this country. So we started campaigning against the death penalty in Zimbabwe during the liberation struggle. And the campaign has continued even to the time when Zimbabwe was coming up with a new constitution. We made some submissions and we saw quite a number of changes that have taken place, particularly from a legal perspective, where you find that at the moment there are limitations to the use of the death penalty. The death penalty cannot be applied to women. It cannot be applied to somebody who was 21 at the time of committing the crime, and it cannot be applied to somebody who is about 70. It can only be used on somebody who has committed a crime in aggravating circumstances. So we have seen quite a lot of progress with regards to advocacy work. We have been speaking to parliamentarians, we have been educating them and talking to them about why, as a country, we really need to join a global trend of abolition of the death penalty.
Is Parliament ready to move with the motion of public hearings?
I'm not so sure if there are going to be public hearings, but what I know is that there's a private bill that was moved by a member of parliament, which seeks to not to abolish as such, but to put in place mechanisms that ensure that the executions are not carried out in the country. So I would want to believe that Parliament is ready, and we will continue as an organization to engage them so that they see the need to abolish the death penalty in Zimbabwe.
Have you ever done your findings to see if people want also the abolishment of the death penalty?
Okay, as an organization, yes, but we have not done our findings, particularly here in Zimbabwe, in a research format. But we have been engaging with the public, and what we have found out is that it looks like people don't care whether the death penalty is abolished or not. Some don't even know that we still have the death penalty in our statutes. Such is the level of lack of information around issues to do with the death penalty. But like I highlighted, for us, yes, the public needs to be engaged around the death penalty, but the death penalty has never really been about public opinion. And I know that there are organizations like the Death Penalty Project that carried out quite a number of researches around public opinion. But it looks like there is a lot of lack of information and understanding of the concept of the death penalty itself, because it looks like people think that when we say the death penalty should be abolished, we are saying that those who have committed violent crimes should go scot-free. We are not saying that as an organization. We are saying that we believe in rehabilitative justice.
Okay. You mentioned that there is a lack of information about death penalty. Who is responsible for informing the people, and why is there such a gap?
The responsibility of what we call human rights education in Amnesty lies with the government of Zimbabwe. And as organizations like us, we come in to assist the government to raise awareness on different human rights issues, even issues to do with the death penalty.
Okay, so why do you think there's such a gap that people are not well informed?
Maybe because there are not enough initiatives to raise awareness and sensitize members of the public on the human rights dimension or the impact of the death penalty as a form of punishment. Okay,
suppose we are to have public hearings. What if the people say yes to death penalty? What's the next for Amnesty International?
Like I said, even if people say they want the death penalty retained, our position remains the same. We oppose the death penalty in all circumstances, regardless of the nature of the crime, because we believe that the death penalty is premeditated murder by the state in the name of justice.
What are the loopholes of death penalty?
Loopholes as in the impact?
Yes.
Okay, we oppose the death penalty. One, when we look at the death penalty, particularly here in Zimbabwe, historically, like I said, the death penalty was applied to voices that were opposing colonial rule at that time. So there are possibilities that the death penalty can be used to silence political dissent. When you look at Mbuyane Handa, she was sentenced to death for resisting colonial rule, but she was fighting for the independence of this country. So you find one of the reasons why, as Zimbabweans, we should be, coming together, calling for abolition of the death penalty, is because it's a relic of the past. We inherited that law from the colonialists. It was never part of our justice system as Zimbabweans to use capital punishment for a crime that is committed. We had ways by which we could resolve conflicts of that nature. And we are saying that maybe the courts can come up with another sentence that is not necessarily the death penalty. And maybe the second reason is that as a nation, we have got the traditional African religion. We are Christians in the country, and the Christian community does not call for an eye for an eye. It speaks about forgiveness. It speaks of empathy. So as a country that has got so many people who are Christians, I want to believe that we should not be retaining the death penalty based on that. And the death penalty is irreversible in the event that there is no justice system that is efficient. There are times when people are actually sentenced to death, and then later it is discovered that this person did not commit that crime, and that person will have already been executed. So the death penalty is irreversible. And once a person is killed and there is a mistake in the justice system, then you cannot get back the life of that person. And the death penalty also creates a vicious cycle of violence. So in other words, we are saying that we are allowing the state to kill somebody in a violent and degrading manner for killing the other person. So we are simply giving the state the power to kill, and we are also creating a vicious cycle of violence. There are quite a number of reasons why, as an organization, we call for abolition of the death penalty. One of the ones that I've already articulated, that it does not deter crime. Research has clearly shown that the death penalty does not deter crime. Governments really need to come up with ways of preventing crime than using the death penalty as an excuse to prevent crime.
You have mentioned that the death penalty was used by the colonial government as a way of punishing the black people. Was it proper for the current government to adopt or inherit the death penalty?
Historically, like I said, the death penalty was used in a discriminatory way. It was used to silence political dissent. It was mainly used against people that were fighting for the liberation of this country. So the death penalty is discriminatory in nature. Globally, you find that people that are on death row, they are poor people who can maybe not afford a lawyer. And in Zimbabwe, the death penalty was used against the black majority who were fighting for their independence. So you find that historically the death penalty was used and is still used in a discriminatory way. And then when you look in terms of people whose relatives have died because of this violent crime. So as Amnesty International, we have had a campaign where those very same people have come up with a campaign that says "not in our name." Though they would want justice for their relative, but not the death penalty.
How many people do we have in Zimbabwe who are in death row?
As of the statistics in our 2023 report on death sentences and executions, there were 61 people on death row, and I know that the other two were sentenced for killing Tapiwa Makore. So, but the official figure from the Ministry of Justice, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs stands at 61, and of course we have these other two that were sentenced to death last year.
Thank you so much, Ms. Rosalina, for affording us this interview. That was Ms. Rosalina Muzerengi, the campaigns coordinator with Amnesty International. We were talking about the death penalty in Zimbabwe, whether should it be abolished or not. It is yet to be decided. Join us at the next time as we discuss the laws of this land. My name is Shurei Murwira, and don't forget to follow us on Sly Media. We are on all social media platforms. See you again next time.
This is Zimbabwe TV, hakudima CV, Sly Media TV, and this sport and dream street in Azoona ndapa news, ndaka wonder name of views, Sly Media TV, mandi chinjira ang my dreams. Sly, oh yeah, Sly Media, 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 kuchinja vision yema ghetto youth, kuchinja life yema ghetto youth. Kutipa nzira sema ghetto youth, kutipa gwara ramangwana rakanaka. Sly, oh yeah, Sly Media.